Something happened in the Strait of Hormuz this morning that most channels are going to misunderstand. Iran claimed it fired 2 missiles at a U.S. Navy warship. The United States said no such attack took place. And right now, neither side can fully prove its version, because the fog of war over Hormuz is so dense that even satellite tracking data is incomplete. But before going any further, focus on one critical detail. China has said absolutely nothing. Not about the alleged missiles, not about Project Freedom, not about the U.S. warship that either was hit or wasn't. That silence, deliberate, precise, almost surgical, is the most important geopolitical signal of the day. Because while the world is debating what happened, China is watching what it means. The United States entered Hormuz this morning believing it was demonstrating strength. In reality, it may have handed China one of the most valuable strategic advantages it has gained in a decade of great power competition. Not because of what happened tactically in the water, but because of what it revealed structurally about power, risk, and control in one of the most important choke points on Earth. To understand this, go back to May 3rd. Donald Trump announced what he called Project Freedom, a plan for the U.S. military to guide hundreds of stranded ships out of the Strait of Hormuz. He framed it as a humanitarian mission. Neutral vessels trapped since the war began, crews running low on supplies, an act of compassion aimed at preventing a slow-moving crisis at sea. But there was a second layer to that message. Trump warned that any interference would be dealt with forcefully. That single word transformed the operation from humanitarian assistance into a potential military confrontation. It signaled intent, but it also created expectations. Expectations that would be tested almost immediately. By the next morning, Iran responded. Its military leadership declared that any foreign armed forces entering Hormuz would be targeted. This was not diplomatic language. It was a direct military warning, stated clearly and publicly, leaving little room for misinterpretation. Then came the incident. Iranian sources reported that missiles struck a U.S. warship near the entrance to the strait. The U.S. Central Command denied it outright. No confirmation, no detailed explanation, just a flat rejection. 2 narratives, completely incompatible, existing side by side. But one fact stands uncontested. The U.S. warship turned back. Whether it was hit or not, whether missiles were fired or not, the outcome is the same. The ship did not proceed. Project Freedom lasted less than a day before reality intervened. And in geopolitics, outcomes matter more than claims. That reality is this. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a shipping route. It is a narrow, heavily contested choke point where geography favors Iran. It is a confined space where shore-based missile systems, naval mines, fast attack craft, and coastal surveillance create a layered defense environment. In such a setting, even the most advanced Navy operates under constraint. This is not open ocean dominance. This is controlled passage under threat. The humanitarian problem inside the Gulf is real. Thousands of sailors remain stuck, supplies are limited, and ships have been waiting for weeks. But the solution was never as simple as announcing an operation. Military capability, coordination, logistics, and risk all matter. And in this case, the gap between announcement and execution was exposed almost immediately. There is also a broader context that fundamentally changes how this event should be understood. A ceasefire technically exists. Brokered through Pakistan, it halted large-scale strikes but did not resolve the core issue. Control of Hormuz. Instead, what emerged is something more complex, a dual blockade. The United States applies pressure on Iranian ports, while Iran controls access through the strait itself. This creates a layered conflict where neither side has full control, but both can impose costs. Now Iran is moving to formalize that control. Proposed legal frameworks aim to regulate passage, restrict hostile nations, and require authorization for transit. This signals a shift from temporary wartime measures to something more permanent and structural. And into that evolving structure, the United States stepped with Project Freedom, without coordination with Iran, without a broad international coalition, and without changing the underlying balance of power. The result was predictable. Now return to China. China has remained completely silent. No reaction, no commentary, no visible intervention. But that silence is not passive. It is strategic. It reflects confidence, not uncertainty. Because over the past 2 months, China's position has quietly improved. At the beginning of the war, Beijing's concerns were real. Instability in the region threatened energy supplies, trade routes, and long-term influence. There were fears of regime change, fears of disruption, fears of losing strategic ground. But as the conflict continued, those fears began to transform into opportunity. China continues to receive energy flows through Hormuz. Not only that, it receives them under conditions that are increasingly favorable. Oil is being purchased at discounted rates, often through alternative systems that bypass traditional Western financial channels. Transactions are increasingly conducted in yuan instead of dollars. This is not just a technical detail, it represents a shift in the underlying financial architecture of global energy trade. Every transaction outside the dollar system weakens the dominance of that system, even if only incrementally. At the same time, Chinese-linked shipping continues to move while others face restrictions or additional costs. Parallel networks, logistical, financial, and diplomatic, remain operational. And all of this is happening without China deploying military force. Meanwhile, the United States is managing a prolonged conflict, committing military resources, and facing growing economic and political pressure domestically. The longer this continues, the more strain accumulates. This is why analysts increasingly describe the situation in simple terms. The United States is engaged but not achieving decisive outcomes. China, meanwhile, is gaining structural advantages without direct confrontation. This is not about winning a battle. It is about shaping the environment in which future decisions will be made. Looking forward, the situation can evolve in several directions. One possibility is escalation. If tensions rise again, the ceasefire could collapse, leading to renewed conflict. This would increase global economic pressure, disrupt energy markets further, and create a more volatile environment. Another possibility is a prolonged stalemate. In this scenario, neither side escalates significantly, and the current conditions become normalized. Trade continues under constraints, pressure remains constant, and uncertainty becomes the new equilibrium. A third possibility is a negotiated settlement. However, major disagreements, especially over control of Hormuz, remain unresolved. Any agreement would likely involve compromises that neither side currently appears ready to make. And finally, there's the scenario where China steps in more visibly, not as a military actor, but as a diplomatic and economic stabilizer. In this role, China could help shape an outcome that aligns with its long-term interests: secure energy access, expanded financial influence, and a stronger position in global negotiations. Each of these paths carries uncertainty. None of them are guaranteed, but all of them share one constant: China's position has strengthened relative to where it stood at the beginning of the conflict. And that brings us back to today. A warship turned back, a mission stalled, conflicting narratives remain unresolved, and China said nothing. But in geopolitics, silence is not the absence of action. Sometimes it is the clearest signal of all. Because while others react in real time, responding to events, statements, and pressure, China is operating on a different timeline, a longer one, a structural one. It is positioning itself not just for the next move, but for the outcome of the entire sequence. And that may matter far more than what happened in the Strait of Hormuz this morning.